Well, this morning I am finishing up a sermon series that I began back in September, going through the book of Exodus, the second book of the Bible. And I want to begin just by reading the last 6 verses of Exodus, Exodus 40, verses 33 to 38. Then Moses set up the courtyard around the tabernacle and altar and put up the curtain at the entrance to the courtyard. And so Moses finished the work. Then the cloud covered the tent of meeting, and the glory of the Lord filled the tabernacle. Moses could not enter the tent of meeting because the cloud had settled on it, and the glory of the Lord filled the tabernacle. In all the travels of the Israelites, whenever the cloud lifted from above the tabernacle, they would set out. But if the cloud did not lift, they did not set out until the day it lifted. So the cloud of the Lord was over the tabernacle by day, and fire was in the cloud by night, in the sight of all the Israelites during all their travels. This is God's word. So what I'm going to be doing this morning is I'm going to be doing a brief summary of Exodus. I'm going to share a couple of my takeaways, and then I'm going to open it up to you to come up and share anything that you learned, anything that God did in your heart through this series. I have put in the bulletin a sermon series summary that will remind you of all the sermons from this series. And so I just want to encourage you to be prayerfully considering what you might come up and share. You know, you never know what's going to happen when you open up the mic, but I have found that when we do that, it's always a blessed time as people come up and share, and you get to hear from people other than me. So let me just summarize again where we've been in Exodus and then share a few of my takeaways. Remember that the Israelites had been rescued by God from this famine, brought down to Egypt. Joseph was the one who had become second in command over all of Egypt. But then it says after some time, a Pharaoh arose who didn't know Joseph's family and was concerned about all the Israelites who had settled in the land. And so he decided to enslave them. And so they were slaves for many, many years, until God finally responded to the cries of his people and raised up Moses and came to meet Moses at this burning bush, revealed himself and called him to follow him and to go and confront Pharaoh about letting the people go, that they might go out and worship him. And Moses, instead of being this courageous, man in response, he was very afraid and made lots of excuses. And God said, you know what, I'll raise up your brother Aaron and he'll come be your mouthpiece, and together you'll go to Pharaoh. And so Moses goes with his brother Aaron to confront Pharaoh and to ask him to let the people go. And of course, Pharaoh refuses. God brings plague after plague after plague upon the people. And finally, the 10th plague, the death of the firstborn, Pharaoh relents and says that they can leave and go out across the Red Sea and go worship the Lord. Moses leads the people out on the way to the Red Sea. Of course, Pharaoh changes his mind and says, what have I done letting these people go? He brings the armies out after them, and as they come to the Red Sea, it seems like there's no hope here. Either they're going to drown in the Red Sea or be killed by the armies, but God makes a way, parting the Red Sea so Moses and the Israelites can come through, and then as the Israelites chase them, they are drowned in the Red Sea. And so Moses and the Israelites make it out to freedom. They are in the wilderness on their way to the Promised Land, but in the wilderness, they need to learn what it means to be the people of God and trust God, because they have lived as slaves their whole life, and they are no longer at a place where there's food. They cry out of their hunger and in their thirst, and God provides for them, reminding them that he is their God. He is not a slave driver like the Pharaoh. He will care for their needs. But it's hard for them to learn that lesson, and they complain over and over, and Moses has to do a lot of intercession for them. But eventually he brings them out to Mount Sinai, and at Mount Sinai, God makes a covenant with them, an agreement. This is what it means to be my people. This is what it means that I will be your God. And he lays out the 10 Commandments and all these other laws and what it means to follow him. And he gives them the instructions on building a tabernacle, which will be the dwelling place for God in the midst of his people. And of course, there's going to be boundaries. Not anyone can just go in and meet with God, but it's going to be a place where the high priest can come in and meet with God, and where God will dwell in the midst of his people. And even in the midst of that, as Moses is up on the mountain, of course, the people grow restless, wondering what has happened, and they build this golden calf as an idol, saying, these are the gods who brought you up out of Egypt, forgetting that they had just received a law saying, don't make idols, of course. And God is like, I'm not even going to go with these people. They are stiff-necked, they are hard-hearted, I'm not going to go with them anymore. But Moses, again, pleads and intercedes, and God relents and says, I will go with you. And so the book of Exodus ends with this portable tabernacle having been built, the glory of God descending to fill the tabernacle. And it's where God will dwell in their midst as they make their way through the wilderness on their way to the Promised Land. So I wanted to share a few of my takeaways, three in particular, one about the Bible, one about God, and one about myself, and then I'm going to open it up for you to share as well. And if this is not working, there we go. The first thing I would say, every time we go through a book of the Old Testament, it increases my confidence in the inspiration of the Bible, that this is God-breathed, right? Every time I start one of these books, you wonder kind of like, all right, so what's the relevance of a book that was written thousands of years ago to our lives today? But as we made our way through every story, it's just incredible to me, again, how every story points to Jesus. Every story points to the gospel. From the Passover lamb that was slain, to the rock that Moses strikes in the wilderness, to the bread from heaven, to the water from the rock, to the tabernacle, to Moses the mediator. On and on, every story, they're not just morality tales about how we're to live or not live, but they're all stories that point to the gospel of Jesus' life, death, and resurrection for our sins. I talked once to an atheist friend, and she was talking about how, yes, there's all these prophecies in the Old Testament about Jesus, but come on, anyone could have arranged things to try to make those prophecies come true. But what she didn't understand, it's not just about prophecies, it's about the whole thing points to Jesus, every story. It's just this masterfully weaved book, collection of books by many different authors over many different years that all tells one grand story of our sin against a holy God, but God's love for us and his sending a Savior to die in our place, to make a way for us to be right with him. So again, that's one of the things, every time we go through one of these books of the Old Testament, it just increases my confidence in the inspiration of the Bible. This is a God-breathed book. Second takeaway is this, that God is holy, and I can come to him with both reverence and intimacy. You go back to Moses meeting him at the burning bush and saying, take off your sandals, the place where you are standing is holy ground. There's this balance that we need to strike when it comes to our relationship with God between reverence and intimacy. And if you lose one or the other, you fall into heresy or into false worship, right? If all you see is that he's a holy God and you have to have this reverence, but you don't see that you could also come to him like a beloved child, then he's just this God that you're afraid of up in the sky, But if you fall too far the other way and you see God as your buddy, that you could just come to like a friend without seeing that he is the holy God before whom we still should bow and give all our reverence, then you fall again into heresy, into error. And as you read through these stories, you see how God's desire is to dwell in the midst of his people, to talk face to face, to have an intimate relationship. But he's also a holy God. And even Moses does not enter the promised land because of his sin against God when he strikes the rock out of anger. So God is holy. When we enter this place even, and God dwells in the midst of his people, how do you come with that kind of reverence? What does it mean to come to church, to walk in these doors with reverence, recognizing you're coming in the presence of a holy God? And then the third takeaway is this. What people in my life need more than anything from me is my holiness. I've heard it was said that that's what people need of their leaders more than anything is their holiness. More than their skill, more than their abilities, is that they are people who are set apart, who seek God with all their heart, who love God with all their heart, who want to follow him. And again, I go back to Moses, and Moses displayed so much holiness in his desire to serve and follow God, but he also, again, disobeyed God and rebelled against him and didn't get to enter the promised land because of that sin. And holiness is a high calling for those who follow him, to be set apart, to be holy as he is holy, to not be like the world, to not live like the world, but to live like Jesus, to follow him. What matters more than anything else is that you are set apart, that your heart's desire is for him, to love him, to honor him, to worship him. So I want to encourage you again and give you an opportunity to come up here and share any takeaways that you have from the series. Again, there's an insert if you need reminders of anything. But I just encourage you to come up and share, introduce yourself, let people know who you are, be brief, and be on point. And I'm going to start it off with our sister Dawn from Jamaica. She sent one by email to me to read, and so I'm going to read her insights. Dawn wrote this: having listened to your inspiration on the book of Exodus, I have learned so many lessons. First, about the character of God, as well about myself. I've learned about God's power and his faithfulness. I've learned the importance of obedience and the consequences when we stray away from God. I learned the value in honoring God's covenant as demonstrated with the children of Israel. And when I also reflect on Moses' life, despite his flaws, God still uses him. It reminds me that God can work through imperfect people. I'm also reassured that he will always provide for his children as he did, providing manna in the wilderness. But the greatest takeaway for me is understanding the sovereignty and holiness of our God. Thank you, Dawn. So I'm going to sit down now. There'll be an awkward silence, and then someone will be courageous and come up front to share.
I'll start it off, so you're welcome. I guess one of my greatest impacts from this book of Exodus was just the way that God's faithfulness and trustworthiness just is all throughout the Old Testament stories, and we can see it very clearly here in Exodus. And I was just reminded, that he is the same yesterday, today, and forever. He did it for them, and he does it for us. And it was just really an encouragement. So that's what I have to share. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Angie, and what was mind-blowing for me going over Exodus is that something just echoed in my head. It's in the New Testament. Jesus says, "I come not to bring peace but a sword." And it came back to me as we were reading Exodus because at some point, help me out, come on, Eric.
After the golden calf?
Yes, okay, so after the golden calf, and is it Moses or Aaron? No, it's Moses says, the people who are with me come over here, and the people who are not with me, you can stay where you are, whatever. He didn't quite say that, but anyway, I realized that that Jesus certainly read Exodus, and his allusion that Jesus was alluding to the place in Exodus where, obviously Jesus, I'm sure, meant this metaphorically, whereas in Exodus it happens literally. People on the side of Moses go and take swords and kill the people who are not with them. So Jesus didn't mean it that way, but he did mean the division, that he came to bring a kind of division. So as I said, it was just mind-blowing to realize that Jesus was alluding to Exodus. So.
Hello, I'm Tim. The greatest impact in my life for this sermon series was when God tested Moses and the Israelites, saying, "You guys can go and have peace, and I won't go with you because I'll kill you because of my holiness and because of your great sin against me." I was going through things in my life, and God always speaks to you. You just got to listen. You know, it could be at the church, could be a friend. But he's always faithful, and he touches your heart when you need it. Thank you.
Jeanette. I feel like this is a regular thing. I never used to get up in church, but I think what meant the most to me of this was God never gave up on the Israelites. They had all these idols. They didn't listen to what he told them to do. They were not obedient. They never gave up on him. I'm like, God does the same thing with us. And he gave us a way, and he gave us direction. And I think of my own life, the idols that I have had and still can have if I don't walk close to him every day. And what a difference when the Israelites follow God's command and they were obedient. Look how their life went. And I think bringing to the New Testament, personally for me, I think of that one parable. And when I was deep in my sin of addiction, that the 99 sheep, the one sheep was lost. And I used to cling to that because I knew I was lost, but I knew that God was still there. So thank you for the message. I know I missed a few, but I'm glad to be here.
Morning, I'm Barb. Full disclosure, I'm not prepared at all with what to say. And my knees are a little weak, so not that that means I'm going to say anything profound, just nervous. So I didn't study a lot of the Exodus, but I do listen to the sermons or take notes or whatever. So I'll just say stuff. So one, I was struggling with some stuff from the past. One Sunday, and Holly and Andy were up here, and I don't know, you know how you just can't make sense of stuff in your head, you know? It's just a blockage. And I've been struggling with this stuff for a year. My high school reunion is coming up, and it's just stuff, you know? So they prayed for me, and stuff at work as well. And I think it was the following Sunday. Again, I don't know the details of the sermon, but it had to do with, I believe, idols and things. And I could never relate to that. and not relate. Like, I understand what it means, but I don't know if anybody can relate to this, but I couldn't wrap my mind around what an idol was in my life. And it's always challenging because people would say, oh, this is an idol in my life. This is, and I'm like, I can't relate, you know, I wouldn't say that, but to me it's like, you know, those thoughts that go through your head, like, am I a believer? Like, do I understand, like, what an idol is? Like, what am I missing? I don't know, you know, that stuff. So, but I just wanted to dovetail off of what Tim said. God is faithful, okay? I just want to tell you. You guys probably know, but I had to be reminded. He knew what I needed to hear. Andy and Holly prayed, and I walked away. You know, you want to feel something, you want to hear something, you know, from God, but I didn't, and then, you know, it's fine, whatever. And then Eric preached, and it wasn't even an idol that he mentioned. And again, it's like, you know, they mention those idols. It's like, yeah, no, I don't get it. You know, I can't wrap my mind around that. Am I beating myself up? You know, am I beating myself up over that? Is that self-condemnation, or is that truly an idol? Or I don't know, you know. So God showed me what the idol was in my life. And it applied to, I think, what I was struggling with, that Andy and Holly, that was an answer to prayer. And what I deal with at work every day. So not only did he answer one, but he is so faithful, and I just don't. And maybe I speak just in our humanness, I'll speak for myself, like, I get so caught up in here, and I don't even give him an opportunity. I don't give him enough credit. Like, I don't wait, or I just don't, I don't have that expectation for me. Like, I lose sight of it, and then he reminds me, and I'm like, yeah, anyway, so that was one. And I'll just say one other one. So the last sermon last week, I listened to it a few times, and I don't know if I can even remember, but let me see what I was going to say. So what I'll say is, so what I appreciate about this church and about our pastor and the sermon is that if you guys remember the sermon, like, I would actually, like, one of those people that would be like, I just want to leave. Like, I just want to leave the earth not because I necessarily want to spend time with God, but just because I don't want to deal anymore. Like, not that I'm dealing with hard stuff, but I'm just, you know, whatever. Like an eternal vacation, thank you. So, anywho, full disclosure, but I'm sure I'm not alone. But it was a great reminder, and I need it all the time that, and I hope and pray that I get to know God. And I even question that, and that gets in the way. You know, like, God, do I even know you? Like, anyway, like, how do I even know you? But whatever. You guys know what I mean, I think. So I'll let the mic go to somebody else.
Hi, I'm Katie. I never planned on wanting to come up here. Barb inspired me. We exchanged glances on her way up here, and I think she and I have similar thoughts on wanting to come up here. it really just hit me this morning talking about the Israelites missing Egypt or wanting to be there in the sense of we had food, we were, sort of looked after, we knew what to do. I'm paraphrasing a lot of that, but I've been struggling at work recently. I've been at the same company, but I used to have a job where it was an inbound call center. So the work came to me. I always knew what I was going to be doing. And I'm in a position now for the last year or so where I'm not on an inbound call center and I have to be more self-directed and plan and stuff. And it feels like a silly thing to bring up, but I've missed being in the call center because it came to me in that familiarity. And I've defined myself by, I'm somebody who needs the work to come to me. I need to be told what to do. And I've just sort of trapped myself in that mindset a bit instead of looking forward and going, gosh, this is a really unique opportunity to do something else. So I was just really resonating, I think, with the Israelites in that moment and realizing there was this sense of missing familiarity. And I don't want to stay bound up in that mindset of needing to be told what to do and to have this, what I think is structure, and just open myself up for the freedom that God offers in a new land. So, thanks.
Good morning. My name is Dwayne. And I've sometimes when I think about the desire of the Israelites to want to go back to Egypt, I question sometimes, was it because that was something that they at least knew, versus the fear of where in the heck are we going? These idols that they served and worshipped in Egypt were just dumb, dead idols. They didn't do nothing for them. But this God was real that they were following. And they had no idea who he was. They had no idea where they were going. They had no idea what their future were. So that creates a tremendous fear as well. And I think for our own lives, a lot of times, it's like, it's just so easy for us to find these rhythms of comfort, these rhythms where we have control of our lives, versus the whole idea of just surrendering to God, whatever the heck that means sometimes. I'm not sure what it even means. But this emptying of ourselves before God to trust in him to take us into a place we've never been before. That is fearful. At least it is for me. I don't know about you. But the confidence with it is, though, it was always God coming to them because he was showing them that he loved them. And I think that's what gives us the confidence we can do to walk into those darknesses of life, those unknowns of life where we just don't understand where God's going to lead us. But to trust that God is there in every bit, whether we can feel it, experience it, hear it, or whatever, he is there. They had these visuals and they struggled with those. We don't have those visuals like they did back in those days. But he's still the same God living in us today. And so I think what this study is once again encouraged me to do is to be humble and trust in God, whatever he's going to bring my way. Marsh and I have just entered in a complete different place in life. We've been retired for just a few months, and there's scariness about going into that because we don't know Well, if you say, God, I am here now, I got all this time on my hands, use me, don't let me waste a day of my life. I say that every day. I'm like, okay, where are you really going to take me? And I'm going to trust that God is good and that he's going to lead us into the right place. And I just pray the same thing for you, that, as you don't fear where God is going to lead you, but with humility and lots of love, take those steps. Thank you.
I'll try to be brief, but when I think about the Israelites continually going back into their sin over and over again, back to the idols, one thing that the Lord reminded me of is, I'm a mom, and all day I am dealing with children that are just going back and back and back to their sin. But they're very honest about it, or at least Grace, my daughter, is, like, I catch her doing something, and what happened? I hit Declan, or I took the toy. And anyways, she's very honest about, most of the time anyways, I shouldn't say all the time, but she's very honest about the ways in which she's turned towards disobedience. And so I think what I'm learning from the series, and what I want to do myself, is to be honest when I'm turning away from God, and to be honest, to learn something from my daughter, right? And God is good, and I'm so glad that I serve a merciful Father that has open arms to me and does want to teach me something and train me to do the right and good thing. If that is my desire for my daughter, how much more is it for the perfect Father who loves me? So, anyways.
There's a lot of courage in this room. I want to thank everyone who got up to share, and this is when I put 10 seconds on the clock, and if there's someone who's been avoiding it but feels like there is something that you want to say, I'll give 10 seconds, and then I'll start talking again. All right. Well, thank you again for everyone who got up to share. Dwayne, what you said just reminds me again, like God doesn't bring them out of slavery to the promised land, right? He brings them out of slavery to the wilderness. And that's where we live. We are in the wilderness. The promised land, that's heaven. That's where we'll be one day. But we are in the wilderness, firmly in the wilderness, trying to learn what it means to follow God when it is scary, when it is a lot of unknowns, and resist the urge to go back to Egypt and go back to the comfort of slavery, but to live in the adventure that it is of following God. And so we're going to respond in worship. And so worship team can come up. Let's respond.